Hey, everybody. I am very excited to have for Coffee and Convo today, Tia Levings. She is a writer. I believe she's also a writing consultant with content strategy for writers. At least that's what I have read as I'm sleuthing more about you. It was a thing. It was a thing. But most recently, the main thing is that she has just released the absolutely chilling book, A Well-Trained Wife. It's right there. And I am so going to call out one of my besties who, you guys know, if you've been here with me the last few weeks, every time this last month or so that I've had an incredible author and I want to hold up their book and be like, hey, look, here's all my notes in it, a friend has stolen my book just before or has stolen it.
I'm glad that somebody else is reading it. So I think
yes.
Thank you for reading.
So I often will get
have not read
pardon?
it. Like you might be shocked to know how many interviews I do where the host has not read the book. So
seriously,
so, yeah, seriously,
I'm like personal ethic. I don't interview authors if I can't stand behind the fact that I have read their book cover to cover.
Thank you. Yeah,
which means my to be read stack is 10 miles long.
Right. I mean, I work on no haters because of that because like we can talk about it from the reader's point of view, from somebody who hasn't read it. And there is value in that. But it is a richer conversation when the interviewer has read the book. And when somebody has passed it on, which this book is getting passed person to person quite frequently, I'm just grateful for that. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, it is the ultimate compliment. Like I read it, I had to share it. I know my mom wants to read it. I had to pry it out of the hands of one of the tweens that I babysit. I was like, I need to talk to your mama before you read that.
I love that. Young women reading it, that makes me so happy.
Yes. Oh, I agree. I told my kids if they want to read it, they can. But if it's somebody else's kid, I might want to just check with your mama, make sure your mama's okay with you.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
So let's step back a little bit. I saw this book when you're first talking about it. I saw you on Shiny Happy People a couple of years ago when that first came out. Well, I guess it came out a year and a half ago. No, it's almost 2 years now.
2023.
It was 2023, because I was watching it with brain fog after I had my big car wreck at the beginning of 2023. I remember that.
Oh, it's surreal.
Yeah. But so I've been following your work since then. And I was super excited to get the book. I pre-ordered it. I was watching my Amazon cart when it was coming out. And first of all, I'm going to fangirl just a little bit because I loved your writing style. I loved how it read like a thriller novel. And yet it's your story. And sometimes we pick up people's books, and they're a good story, but it doesn't just grip you. And I have my big, like, circular egg chair. It's like a patio chair, but it's in a room, and it's where I curl up. I have pillows, a fuzzy rug inside the chair. I have twinkly lights all around the chair. And I curled up in that chair for hours because I could not put this book down. So first of all, I want to thank you for first just writing it, because as someone who's lived through some similar things, I know that was a hefty challenge to relive and write and articulate all of that.
Yeah, it was.
And as someone who appreciates good writing, thank you for the way that you wrote it, the compelling voice. But also, it was like, I mean, your story is yours, your details are yours. But I know I'm not the only one, because I've talked to a bunch of other women who have also read it. And every single one of us is like, it was like reading my story. Different details.
Right.
Nuances changed, but it was my story. So I don't know, this may be just like a duh kind of question, but what got you past the point of, I have this story, to I will publish this story?
Mhm. Yeah,
What
it's
was
a
that
great
like?
question. And it was not a single point. I think I have to honor the experience. Is that it was 10 years. 10 years took me to write it. I had to learn how to write a long form book. I had never done that before. I knew the spiritual and like trauma survivor reasons why I wanted to tell it, but I
Mhm.
wanted to tell it well. I knew like you get one shot to tell a story like this, and I wanted to give it everything I had and leave nothing on the table. And so I studied writing. I worked with coaches. I went through a whole process
Mm.
where it was a novel at one point, which is part of the reason why it is so compelling because I had to tell it. I couldn't step into it yet. I was still telling this
Mm.
story through a character. I was very afraid of repercussion of telling my story. So I like, okay, I'm going to make a character. Her name was Shasta, and I put her through the whole. It was a memoir, but it was I was trying to tell
Written as
myself that.
a, right.
Yeah, this was like in 2013, maybe 14.
Okay.
And so what happened is the it just I was going through therapy at the same time. And as I was growing, I needed to learn how to like step into myself, into my own power. It went through when it was a memoir with a pseudonym. I needed that comfort buffer for a little while.
Mm.
This all started as my therapeutic journals. So it is an evolution to get it where it is. I am an evolution to get me where I am. And they paralleled. And the compelling nature, the fact that you can't put it down, all of that is because memoir is not truly like a litany of the bad things that happened to you. It is how you were changed and formed through your experiences. So I'm telling the story of how extreme views manifested in my family, and I'm telling you the story of how I got into a cult and out of a cult, and how I lost my voice and then found it again. So that
Mm.
story is what pulls you through, and it was that compelling. Like I get a lot of feedback of people who haven't finished a book in a long time. They don't have the attention span for books anymore, and they couldn't put my book down. And that's some of the best feedback I receive because I worked so hard at cliffhangers and making sure that I was keeping your interest because what you get out of the book is so important to hang in there. It's not just sensationalism of my own story. There's a reason why all of it is in there.
I I love knowing that background. Um,
Mm,
I'm a writer. I have
yeah,
not done a memoir. I've thought about it. I haven't gotten over that hump yet.
yeah.
Um,
You sure you have one in there that you could
oh,
be?
I do. But I've thought that I don't want it to just be just another book, And
Mm,
so as
right.
I am reading your book and others that have been coming out over the last couple of years, because I think there's been more the last 2 years
There
than
is.
there have been like all of the decades previously in this genre.
Mhm.
And I love how you blazing the way has set the bar so high.
I tried.
And I
See.
no, you succeeded. And I am grateful for it. Um,
Mm,
I Can I ask? I know you said it was this whole journey, but when you
yeah.
finally decided, was there any moment that you look back on where you finally had the freedom to say, I'm I'm doing this and I'm doing it with my name?
Yes, that was a very specific point in time. It was the day of the Women's March, and I hadn't like not been able to vote in this marriage. I had not been able to have my own thoughts and expressions and opinions and all of the things. And I'd been working this out on the page, and I had been working out the process of how I lost my voice and had my agency and power taken from me, and how my faith was used against me in order to achieve that. And it all just kind of came to a raging head at that point. It was
Mm.
January, and I was in such grief over like the current events that we were in, but also in my like an ocean of rage behind me. Like it just felt like this momentum. And I was like, you know what? I have nothing to lose. And in my particular story, because I lived the inside of that, of so much of what we see today has been like a long range environment. in the churches especially. And I want to come back to why there's so many stories coming out right now. That momentum and that like swept into feeling, anybody who's been on the inside and can see it manifesting on a wider scale feels a responsibility to warn people.
Yeah.
I knew I had some like the actual experiences in my marriage are some of the most extreme, but they're not unusual. And as soon as I say one thing about it, I get Me Too's in my box that are like giving me fire. Like, this is not rare. This is just not talked about. And those two things are not the
Right.
same thing. So what they
Yeah.
needed was somebody who would say, yeah, I went through this. This is what I faced. And this is how I got there. And a lot of us are on that same track. And you're going to relate to my story. And you're going to be like, whoop, like I was on this path and then the roads diverged and you went one way, and I didn't have that same experience, but I can relate to what happened to you because we were the same until that point. So that is what's happening. And that's why I told it. Now, why there are so many books coming out is because there's a mass exodus from the church. High control religion is not attending to abuse claims, abusers. They're not holding people accountable, and people are leaving. And when they leave, they get courage to tell their stories. And when they hear other people telling their stories, they join in. So there is a reckoning, awakening right now. I think that's what we're seeing. And publishers realize that there's readers for these stories. They'll buy the manuscripts. That's what they'll do. So the more of us talk and the more of us buy and read and share and do this.
So what you're saying is we need more stories being pitched to publishers so that they're, yeah.
It's one of my favorite
I
quotes.
want to go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Adrienne
No,
Rich,
please.
Adrienne Rich said, when a woman tells the truth about her life, she opens space for others. This is a paraphrase. She creates space for others to do the same. And that is what storytelling does, is it unlocks the door for somebody else to come step through and say, oh, me too, or this is what that looked like for me, and tell their own story.
It's kind of like that quote that says, and again, I'm loosely paraphrasing, but I heal out loud. I am choosing to heal out loud so that others don't have to suffer in silence.
I love that one. Yeah.
So if I'm healing vocally, it breaks that cone of silence for others.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something you said about the exodus from the church. And I know individual personal beliefs are very sacred things. And it can be challenging to discuss the topic without trampling on people's personal, deeply held private journeys. And I want to be very sensitive to that. But I also want to state something that I have seen. I think it's profoundly evident in your book. It's something that I have seen with hundreds and hundreds of cases where I have worked personally with particularly spouses of leaders, clergy, teachers, elders, deacons in high control religions. Similarly to my own story, having been a clergy spouse. And I have personally come to the conclusion that high control religions of every stripe are coercive by nature, which makes high control religions an abusive system. Therefore, while I personally know of, and I would not say that it can't happen, there are many wonderful, kind, good, caring people who are in high control religion environments. The dynamic of abuse is baked into the systems.
Yes. We know that from listening to people who've survived it.
Yeah. And each person's journey out of that, when they finally awaken to recognizing signs of coercion, can vary. I mean, some people end up not believing anymore at all. Some people end up rejecting high control religion and still clinging to their faith, and it takes a different form than it did before. And I'm not here to discuss which, if any of those paths have merit over another. I just want to be supportive of those who may come to your book and read it and say, oh my goodness, I was in a maybe the same, but maybe a vastly different denominational sector,
Mm-hmm.
but the principles and the concepts of interpersonal interaction and the weaponizing of theology to give coercive control to a select group of people was still there.
Yeah. Yeah. So a couple of things in all of that. I would encourage people to build a little, I call it the window of consideration. It doesn't mean that you're going to change your mind or buy or borrow somebody else's, step into someone else's beliefs. It means that you're going to create a little compartment in your mind that says, okay, just let me hear what they have to say and let me consider what they're saying. So that's the context of what I'm talking about right now. And we do not have to end up anywhere. I believe our journeys are fluid at their best when they're best. Like you are not ending up at any location. You're allowing yourself to be fluid and grow and learn and change your mind when you meet new information. I think that's all really important to the flexibility of our mind, because what I say, and I think what you were saying as well, is fundamentalism can be in anything. It can be in both sides of the aisle. It can be in our exercise routine. It can be in our diet. It can be in our approach to parenting. Fundamentalist attitudes are when you put the purity of an idea over human need, or I'll say humanity sometimes. That ideological purity must be upheld at all costs, and that is what is being served. And so that usually is achieved through a top-down power structure. There's usually a guru at the top. There's usually a formula for success and a promised outcome that if you follow the steps of this formula, you will get this intended beautiful result. And people want it. Fundamentalism thrives in environments that are chaotic and scary. And the fundamentalist leaders, in whatever pattern that is, whatever group you're in, will feed that fear and nurture that fear and sometimes create it in order to.
Oh, yes. Not sometimes. I mean,
so this is what we see in like the marriage when you have a narcissist at hand. You know, this is also what happens if you have a narcissistic leader in your church or your group or your whatever outlet we're talking about. So we don't even have to speak about specific groups right now to talk about patterns and systems. And one of the other things I bring up a lot is fundamentalism. Whatever it is, one of the first things they do is they make you complicit in the system so that you will feel guilt and shame if you even get near questioning it. You're taught not to question it. And if you say, well, am I right about this? Or is that right? Or I didn't want that to happen. That wasn't the intended outcome I had. You're already going to feel yucky because you participated. You did something to it. So that's why I build the window of consideration. I say, try to set it all aside and listen to someone's personal experience, because I can not tell you what it's like in every high control church, but I can tell you what happened in mine. And I can tell you what happened on the world stage that drove me to write my story. And we can just talk about Tia. You don't have to think about entire swaths of people and groups and systems.
So building on that, I have two thoughts. And one is, if something is good, healthy, and true, it can withstand questioning. If you are forbidden to question something, beware.
Yeah. You are in deep danger if you're not allowed to question something.
If you are not allowed to question something, beware, because that means that whoever is pushing the principle, the concept, is benefiting somehow from you not having any questions.
That's right.
And ultimately, they don't themselves believe that it is true enough and real enough to withstand healthy questioning.
Very, very, very
also,
true.
Their ego cannot be challenged. And someone who values certainty above curiosity, that's a really dangerous pattern.
It's very fragile as well, which means it can explode. Tender dynamite, tiptoe around it. You're in a minefield.
That sounds like a children's book. Are you going to write a children's book on coercive control called Tender Dynamite? I want to see this picture book, Tender Dynamite. Yeah. And another aspect, though, and this is something I've been discussing with several people in my life recently, and that is, I have come to the conclusion that any belief that we hold if it is good for the wide swaths of population, it
Mhm.
must also stand up under the test of me being able to say it to you face to face and eye to eye. If I
That's right.
have these big, broad, sweeping strokes about all those people, and then I
Mhm.
can't actually stand by that without feeling like a cruel and crazy person, if I am sitting on the couch with one of those people face to face, if I have to suddenly start making exceptions for all of the things that I believe are true in the broad strokes, then the belief has broken down.
Yeah. You're describing integrity. If you can't
Yeah.
stand by what you believe with integrity and humanity, then
Yes.
again, you're in danger.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So one of the things that we chatted about before we got started talking, and we didn't get deep into it, so we can do that now. And
Yes.
that is the role of post separation abuse,
Mhm.
often as it deals with your parenting, custody, these kinds of things. I know you said that you were open to kind of delving into that. And that's an area where I do a lot of work. I have a lot of audience members who are
Mhm.
drowning, mired in that.
Mhm.
And let's kick the door open on that.
Yeah. Let's kick it. So I love this question because no one ever asks it. It's not really in the book.
Let's deal with it then.
alluded to it a little bit. You don't leave the kind of situation that I was part of with a nice and tidy, quick divorce that doesn't have any custodial issues. And I
Mhm,
do like the back 25% of the book is my healing journey and what it was like in those years after. And so you will hear about my forensic investigations, some of the I was spent a year in hiding. So that's in there. But I didn't get into the nitty gritty of
no, and it
post
was conspicuously
use.
absent. As someone who
Yes,
has lived much of
as
that,
someone who knows.
10, 10-year custody litigation and all kinds of crazy stuff. Um,
Yes,
I was sitting there thinking, I actually did the math. I was like, oh, her youngest kid just turned 18. Uh-huh.
yes. Good, good. That is an insider's view right there. I figured I trusted the reader to do that. I trusted the reader to have gone, if you've gone with me through that much of the story, you will know that no, he didn't. And I did a little bit of update of where Alan is and that I hope he's well and quiet. He's not absent from our lives. And it was a 10-year, I wouldn't call it a custody battle. I would say entanglement
Mm,
um,
yeah,
of of somebody who's very static and does not change
right.
against somebody who's very dynamic and has gone through extreme change. I have gone through
Mhm,
a total transformation.
right.
And so, yeah, we can talk about what that was like. I mean, post separation abuse continues.
Yeah,
It's not
share.
something that,
Share what are you free to share? So I feel a little bit shackled to ask exactly the right question, but in this, I just kind of want to open the floor to you
yeah,
because I know this is highly relevant to Wild's audience. And when we're done, I'm probably going to go back and put a little blurb about it in
yeah.
the comments for our session today so that everyone knows that we cover this. So what
Mhm.
what are your thoughts and
Mm.
tidbits about this that you're ready to share?
One of the hardest things that, and I did talk about this a little bit in the book, because as I was, so I had an extreme escape, and it was a very violent, visceral leave at midnight, escape with my children that went into an immediate system. I did not have any way of predicting what that was going to be like. So when you leave like that, 3 weeks later, he had a full psychotic break.
Mhm,
And that involved the police, and then that involved the mental health professionals. And so a lot of things that might have been in our control and choice were not, and no longer in our control and
right.
choice. And suddenly I was looking at things that I would have not anticipated, such as orders of protection, um, forensic investigators, I don't know, miracles. Like he tried to
Yeah,
commit suicide by cop, and
I
um,
saw that.
that would have killed him. That's something that should have killed him, and it didn't.
Mhm,
I don't know if I can say that on streaming. It's like there's so many words we're not allowed to say. Unalived him. That should have unalived him, and it did not. So, but it
right.
did like spike all the cortisol and all the fear. And then I was followed and chased and pursued by somebody who we knew was murderous and unstable.
Mm.
Um, and so that created a reactive chain of events that also couldn't have foreseen. So I'm so grateful to have the internet and online community and friends and family and support networks all through the state, or the country actually, where he didn't know where I was. He didn't know who I was with. And there was no, unless he was in my actual device, he wouldn't have been able to know that. And it was a quick education at a time when I was in visceral shock. And right now I'm working on my second book. It's called The Soul of Healing, A Survivor's Guide to Recovery After Religious Trauma, and it's coming out in 2026. And
What?
and it's
We have to wait that long?
Yes, because it's hard to release a book and write another one at the same time through an election and 2 moves. Like, I'm a human being.
Fair enough. I mean, yes. Okay. Fine.
It's a DIY self-help book. It's not memoir, but it has a lot of my story in it because I'm just a layperson. This is just how I navigated recovery from religious trauma while it was being defined, while we were having this language evolve and the resources for it. And it was dovetailing with domestic violence recovery that I wasn't even out of yet. And I think one thing that was very important to note, that I always like to make this point, is that when a woman leaves, she can be in more danger than when she was inside. And
absolutely,
that's what happened. And then there was a season of time where I was expected to relinquish my children without my protection there to buffer them. I had always buffered them. And now the court was saying he needs to have visitation, and the whole onus switched to he cannot be unsupervised with these children, not because he doesn't love his children, he will hurt them in order to hurt her. It's how much vitriol he had against me and has till this day. So I'm mindful of the lengths he will go to in order to cause me pain, and how that blurs his whatever judgment he has. I'm just totally careful about that. Also, he works on a fragile psychology that needs a lot of external support. And I am not trying to poke his bear. I want him to be happy and calm and settled in his new life. I want my children to be able to navigate the role that they have with them at this point. But your math was correct. My youngest has passed the 18-year mark. I'm not bound in the same way that I was. And let's see. Oh, I wanted to say, I feel like I'm monologuing a little bit, so feel free to break in.
No, I'm really enjoying listening, but
yeah, I wanted to say that one of the first challenges I had, that I still have to this day in this conversation, is that it is extremely hard to hold enough space within yourself to call what happened to you accurately by its name, and also uphold the reputation of the person who hurt you. If this was a random criminal who raped me, I could just be very black and white about it. I have to take an unfundamentalist approach to my abuser and say, I see his humanity. I honor his humanity. That is hard to do when he has caused this much pain and continues to cause pain. Like, that's very difficult. And I didn't have the capacity for it very well in 2007. Like, learning to call marital rape, while still navigating custody issues with the person who I knew could hurt us and was hurting us, was sometimes too much to hold. I mean, I'm not like some sort of superhuman who can hold it without breaking. And there were many times that I broke, and because I was still in shock, and navigating all of the things that come just from that one single event. Like, I should have, in a perfect world, this wouldn't have happened, I guess, if it was a perfect world.
Well, in a perfect world, this book wouldn't be needed. But
let's step back from that imperfect marriage, this awful marriage. I left it, and then I stepped into a perfect world. I would have been cared for, cradled, comforted, completely buffered from any violence. I would not have had any stress. I would have been able to process my shock. That's not true. You step into one world, out of one danger, into the bright light that's raging around you, and you have to keep your chin up. You have to function on a daily basis. You have to keep raising your kids. You have to navigate the threats coming through your cell phone. You have to look over your shoulder all the time.
And if you're standing there blinking in the bright headlights, everybody's like, oh, this person is not capable. This person is not fit.
Right.
This person is too traumatized. This person is, and you're like, whoa, hold the phone. You just shined a floodlight in my eyes after I was in the dark in a cave for
exactly. Yeah. Again, inside
you know,
knowing.
I'm gonna throw in a shameless plug right here at this, because I feel like you couldn't have teed this up more perfectly. But one of the things that I have launched this year is actually hand holding and text coaching for women going through this. Yes. Because when we're going through this, and I went through, again, different details, you're telling my same story. I went through finally getting to the end of where I'm like, okay, this is actually bad enough. I don't have to stay for life. And overcoming those religious beliefs and that entrapment, and in bondage. And then in my own story, which this session is not about me, but there was similar to where you had that flee in the middle of the night. My details were different, but there came a point where everything came to a head and my path was blatantly obvious to take action. And then thinking, okay, I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to tell the truth and we're going to be safe. And that began the next decade of not safe.
A different kind of danger. Yeah.
Not supported. And in many cases, not believed. And not protected. And then realizing, for me, and I see this with clients all the time, that everything that makes sense to a former fundy mama's heart about what you need to do to protect your kids and how they need to be raised in this environment you need to provide for them, and the morals and the principles and the lifestyle and all of the things that you have always said you were willing to just lay down your life for. You will do this for your kids. This is how you're going to raise your kids. None of that matters. And everything that actually matters to the court is stuff that's like not even on your radar. And everything that you think matters a lot will get flipped on you in the court system.
Yes.
And if you were a really good fundamentalist kind of wife, you don't have, in most cases, you don't have proof, because you never called the police. You never wrote this stuff down. You never took pictures of things. You never documented stuff. So I actually, most people can't afford one-on-one coaching and waiting. Sometimes you need answers like now, like somebody's at your door, or you've got a text message and you don't know how to respond and you're super dysregulated. And so text coaching gives you that access and that hand-holding to help understand the system and understand how to get more out of your lawyer and understand how to put together your evidence. So that's actually something I've just launched this year. And the response has been amazing. And the need, I mean, it's just like a bottomless pit. So that's actually under my name right here, My Freedom Navigator. It's closed right now. It may be open if you're watching this later. And I'm only opening it to just a handful of people at a time. And then I onboard and stabilize them. And then I'll open it again with just a few more spaces. So anyway, if you want to know more about that or apply to get on the wait list, you can do that right there. Thank you, Tia, for giving me an opportunity to set that up.
You spoke to little 34-year-old me who was like, I needed that.
You were 34 too.
I was a baby. I
was 34.
I think there's something about turning 30 that makes your mechanisms come online. And my critical thinking and my protective mama bear strength rose after I turned 30. I mean, I was very many times in a parking lot or with somebody at the door or getting flooded with messages and not knowing how do I tank, what's important in this. And my friends and I who were going through at the time, we were like, we should have some kind of like, I don't know, coaching service or something. This was like back then when the technology wasn't there to sustain it. And that's the thing that didn't make it happen, was like, there's no way to scale that. So I'm very excited that you have that. It's it's such a thing. Something you said about if you're a very good fundamentalist wife, you haven't kept a record. And I know we were conditioned that love keeps no record of wrongs. And I've reframed that love keeps a record.
Mhm.
You need to keep records. You need to document things. And it's one of the first lessons I learned when I got out, and I was, and I still have them. I told myself when the book came out, I would get rid of all the emails, the binders I have of records and screenshots and all of it. And I can't get rid of it yet. I can't burn it. There's no
Yeah.
catharsis that's getting ready to happen. I'm like, that you might need it for court feeling is there. And it's just, I know it's a wound that hasn't fully healed yet, because the constant agitated stress that you're under when you're in an extended custody battle like that, still undergoing abuse, that the court now says, like, if they were presented with it, they would say it's not okay, but you don't even get to bring a lot of that up. You just have to kind of accumulate it, endure it, and then it can get, summarized really quickly by an attorney or
In about 6
or a
minutes. They'll
facilitator.
have maybe 6
Yeah.
minutes to like go,
Yeah.
and here's this one thing, and
Right.
then it gets rolled on, and you're like, wait, that was like 4 years of information. How do you make a decision on it in 6 minutes or less in a courtroom? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's why I'm really grateful for forensic investigation. Was extremely stressful and expensive. However, it kept a judge from having to be a decision maker when he doesn't know our case. And it was very important with such a sophisticated abuser who was able to mask so well. He eventually gave up masking in court, but for a long time he masked well in court. And the investigator would say, no, actually, or he would suss out his lie. Or he would have a psychological exam to back it up, or there would be something there. And we had 2 of those. They were arduous processes, but they ultimately protected us.
That's great.
And I think having that is if you can get one, ask for it. Yeah. And it's helpful.
It can, and there's a couple of ways those can go. There can be like the psychological, like parenting evaluator forensic investigation, and there can also be financial forensic investigator.
Yes.
Where, like, if you have years of hiding finances and misdocumenting things to the court, and that's actually the forensic side that I ended up living through. Was having to hire a forensic accountant. And again, like you said, super expensive, absolutely worth it.
Yeah.
And, I actually just did, I haven't even released it yet at the time of today, a workshop with Gretchen Baskerville on how to navigate a parenting time or a parental evaluation, and how to interact with a parenting evaluator, because that's, again, a whole other skill set. And if you just walk in and you're like, here's what I think is important and here's how bad they are, it will not go well for you.
Yes, absolutely. And they are not there for you. They are there for the child. So
they say they are. And sometimes they end up being there for the abuser. So
exactly. They can be worked like a fine tune. And oh my goodness, that was we had so many of them. One of the things that was true in our case was that the professionals would get either fired or they would quit because he would not pay them. I would be making all my payments and stressing out how to make all my payments, and he would not pay. So then the professional would tell the judge, I haven't been paid for my services. And so the judge would have to reassign someone else. And, it was we'd start over again. That happened many times. Also, he rotated through attorneys. So then that was also dragging things out, because the attorneys would come on board with the initial payment and then fade out as they were not paid.
So again, you're telling my story, girl.
I know, but I've sat on so many couches in the early years, pleading for their ear, thinking that they were on my side, me, and they were not. They were doing the neutral job of seeing who is best for the children. And if I didn't come seeming like a competent parent who could control my emotions, that would work against me. My ex-husband was very good at masking in those sessions initially, so he seemed like the more even-keeled parent. And it only took time and sessions to get to where you get the high control, the breakdown, what happens when he's not in control. that's where the sparks really start to fly. And as the kids became teenagers and he wasn't in control, he got to show himself many times. And I learned how much of a backseat I needed to take. I needed to work on my own regulation, my own calm and cool decision making. I needed to open my mind to ways of parenting that I would have previously thought were threatening, but are mainstream, and they're mainstream for a reason. And if you want the court on your side, you have to be willing to do things that old you would have cried about. New you being strong at is going to raise resilient children. Maybe they need to go to public school. Like that's an example for me. Like I was this dyed-in-the-wool homeschooler, terrified of forces, even though I was homeschooling for positive reasons. I wasn't one of those fear-based homeschoolers that is trying to shelter them from the whole world. But it was still scary putting them in an inner city public school. But that's what the professionals needed to see in order for me to have custody, which is ultimately most important. And it turned out those public school teachers were amazing for my children. It widened our village. It gave us so much more exposure. They had places to go to. They weren't embroiled in the home drama all of the time. I think giving my kids like a mental break from the like just space from the situation was important so that they could have things in their lives that weren't about this all the time. Yeah, all of it ultimately was for their good, which is, if you've come from a religious background and you know that verse well, all things work together for good.
Romans 8:28.
That takes courage. You have to be willing to stand in your courage.
It does.
Yes.
Truly. And it's, again, takes breaking away from that sense of both fear-mongering or making decisions ruled by fear, and breaking away from that feeling of being obligated to always have 100% certainty. So
Bingo.
Being able as a parent to move from, I know exactly how to get the results that I want, the Gothard kind of approach. Do this, you will have the happy family. Do this, you will have the happy marriage. It's not a prosperity gospel for parenting. It doesn't work. Well, I mean, that is a prosperity gospel for parenting, but healthy parenting doesn't revolve around that prosperity gospel.
Exactly.
A plus B equals C always kind of thing, because we're dealing with humans who are different. And every one of our children is different. And so when I was able to move out of that sense of absolute certainty that this is how it must be, and I'm second generation homeschooling mom, it's the same kind of thing. Also not doing it to keep my kids out of everything, but I have neurodivergent kids, and in their younger years, they've really thrived with the flexibility of being home. And now they thrive in a completely different school environment, which is
look at the
fantastic.
foundation you were able to give them. I absolutely love that. Yeah. And that's what you're talking about, fundamentalism. And this is a fundamentalist idea that says this is how it has to be. And if you can put people first, people over ideas, which is what you're talking about, seeing as a human individual need is more important. What do you need right now? What do you need right now? It's more important than anything you were taught.
And also that sense that if it becomes what we don't need right now, I'm free to recalibrate.
That's right. You can change your mind.
Like it's okay. And that goes back to that not having to be certain and acting like that certainty is the only one path. Like, if you need something different next school year, okay, we'll recalibrate. If we need to reassess this, we will reassess it, decide what is healthy, what is working for us, what is best for our growth and our safety and our healing, and we will adapt and we will adjust. And it's okay to be curious about whether or not this is bringing us to a place of healing and wholeness and resilience and health, or if we're just trying to stick to one thing because we've been told that's the only way it can be.
Right. Exactly.
Like kind of releasing that rigidity.
Oh, that's exactly what I was going at the beginning when I talked about fluidity. It is really important to stay flexible, and whatever it takes to allow yourself to move from a position to be soft, to meet an individual's need instead of creating a swath of needs, which is in a quiverful situation. you're dealing with swath of needs all the time. Whatever, like there's like
Right.
this section in
Just
to train up a child.
statistically speaking,
Yes,
you
or maybe
have to.
you have to. It's
Yeah.
household management. Created to be his helpmeet. I think it's in. Debbie Pearl is
Mhm.
talking about how you should give them one breakfast. Everybody gets one breakfast every day. That's their breakfast. One lunch. Everybody gets the same lunch every day. And it's only different if dad's home, and then it's what dad wants. This whole thing. I'm Debbie Pearl's a monstrous source, but that thinking where you're in the lane of capitalism and production. You're just producing more babies, producing more house,
Cookie cutter.
the
It's
whole
really a
thing.
cattle car cookie cutter
Yes.
mentality.
Getting out of that is going to confront everything on a daily, minute, granular basis. Every moment you're going to be met with humanity and individual need. And the old ways are not going to serve you because you don't want to become as high control as what you came from.
Yeah. Something I meant to mention earlier, but I do want to mention it before we wrap up, and that is I loved the fact that your story highlighted some polar opposites in how clergy supported you. I mean, there was the whole high control thing, but when it got to where your priest at the time said, "You've got to leave, and here's what I will do to help you."
Yeah.
I get goosebumps just repeating that part. I cried at the fact that a clergy person stepped into the gap and said, even where they were just like, no, he needs to come over. He needs to say goodbye to the kids. And that way he can't allege kidnapping. Because I do want to say, if you're watching this right now and you're in a similar situation to Tia, do not just pack up and leave and cross state lines without getting legal advice, please, because we are how many years later now, and the system continues to evolve and change, and that can backfire if you don't do it exactly right.
And I had no idea to do that. I would have just gone home to my parents.
Yes. I wouldn't have expected you to know these are the steps I need to take. But for your clergyman, your priest to step in and say, you need to do this, which will cover your butt for this. And you need to do this, which will cover you for this. I had tears.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the clergy responses I got was, you're being too unforgiving. Who cares if you didn't get the guns out of the house? You need to go back anyway. Why don't you stop being so hard on the situation? None of that. I got none of that kind of support. And I love that your experience was able to juxtapose that level of what it should be when you needed it most compared to the whole rest of the story.
I think that's
one little bright spot.
I had not had any experience with progressive Christianity at that point, and I had not had any experience with people who were willing to set their faith traditions position on something aside to help one human being in need. And that particular priest is very good at that. He still works in that field. He works on the border of a very racially driven area to bring people together, and that's how he lives. The tradition that we were a part of was characterized by that, but it has now been infiltrated with fundamentalism and has changed dramatically in the past 5 years, especially. So I don't necessarily recommend whole denominations anymore. But what I do recommend is that when you're working with somebody, faith-based or not, that's a flag to look for. Are they willing to look me in the eye, like you were saying, and talk to me and deal with me as a human being? Or are they going to tout the party line or the church line or the denominations line of what our position is as Christians? That is not going to serve you in your emergency. You're not dealing with positions. You're dealing with an emergency that is based on human need. So, I'm really grateful.
Right to be safe.
Yes, you have a right to be safe.
You have the right to be safe. Period. Just
Period.
Like we could sum this whole thing up in, you have the right to be safe.
Yes.
Full stop. One last question.
Yes.
In the past 5 years, because 10 years ago, there was nothing. 7 years ago, there were rumblings. 5 years ago, some books and research started making its way into bookshelves. 2 years ago, it was like a tidal wave unleashed. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's still building. We have not seen the crest and the full impact of that tidal wave yet. But
Yeah.
in the growing number of books that are about exposing religious systems, harmful religious systems,
Mm-hmm.
what is your personal hope for a well-trained wife and what impact it will have on the publishing industry going forward? We've talked a lot about the readers,
I
but
think,
do you
yeah,
have a dream for that?
I do. I think, I hope that big sales, like, so when you step into traditional publishing world, you step into
Mhm.
product sales and you step into what the markets need. And I'm very grateful to work with the team that I do, that they value, like, they didn't pick at my word count. They didn't pick at my content. They promoted my message in a politically sensitive time. They took a risk on a debut author without, I didn't have really anything behind me. So
Mhm.
I'm so
On a
grateful
memoir, no less,
on a
which
memoir.
is like
Yeah.
which is a double risk. Yeah.
I knew it was fire, but you need people to also believe in your fire.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm so grateful for the St. Martin's Press for that, and for my editors and my marketers and everybody that's like, you get a team, and it's an adjustment to have a team when you've been
Yeah.
a lonely eagle for a long time. But so what I think is hoping, like, I am now a comp for other authors who, a comp is like a comparable title that sold well.
Yes.
Um,
Mhm.
so I have, my book has sold well and it's continuing to sell well, and it's on this big incline, and it debuted on the New York Times bestsellers list at position 15. So that's also very important. It was an Audible Canada Best of Year. We just found out that last week. It's a Goodreads Reader's
Nice.
Choice nominee and a Southern Book Award nominee. So it is doing well. And I think when you have the product evidence that a book like this will sell, it gives other publishers confidence to choose other titles and promote other stories. And I think they're extremely timely and relevant. Let me tell you, I worried this book was not going to be released in time to be the warning that it is for what happens when high control religion becomes mainstream. And
Yeah.
it's just gotten more timely as we go, And now it's
Tell me
extremely
that.
timely. Now it's a survivor's guide
Yeah.
of how to get through this. So
Right.
I think, I hope that publishing just feels affirmed that these will sell.
Mhm.
People want these
Yep.
stories, and they take courage from them, and that's where the true um, psychological health improvement our country needs to go through is in being able to be flexible, open people who are fluid and not high control, and will do their work. We need stories of people doing their work and becoming more self-aware, and that's what
Yeah.
this is. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, if someone's watching today or anytime on the replay, and they just feel really drawn to you,
Mm.
what in a healthy way, not a creepy way. I just, wow, that
Right.
sounded better in my head.
No,
not,
it's
not
fine.
fire. Uh, but no, but what what would be an appropriate environment for someone to contact you? Do you work with people or is your work separate from your book? Are you
Mm.
open to connecting with readers and receiving emails, that kind of thing? If someone
Oh
wants to contact you, how
yeah. Yeah.
can they?
Well, I'm
And
very
what would they contact you for?
yes. So I'm very active on all the social media platforms. Tia Levings Writer, at Tia Levings Writer. You can find me on Threads, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Blue
Blue
Sky.
Sky. I
Yeah.
just saw you on there
I'm just
this
brand
week.
new there, and it's like so much like Threads. I'm like, I don't know,
Mhm.
but I'm there, and also through my website. My DMs are open. My contact email is on there, contact@tialevings.com. I have office hours where you can book time with me if you just want to talk
Okay.
about something that came up around the book, or you
Wow.
have a question about something. And I will have offerings in 2025 for groups. So definitely sign up for my email
Wonderful.
list. And I have the Anti-Fundamentalist on Substack, which is how I'm actively deconstructing fundamentalism in news, headlines, family, culture,
Yeah.
and in my personal recovery walk right now. So that's tialevings.substack.com.
Great. Thank you. Do you have
You're
any
welcome.
last thoughts before we wrap up?
I
Anything
just
you really wish
applaud,
people knew?
yes. I applaud women of courage who are trying to break cycles and do the thing. And you are warriors. And I know that it is a day-to-day basic battle to like get up and put your feet on the floor and face the storms, but keep going, keep going. Your children are worth it, and you are their only advocate. So stand up for your babies and be with who they need.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you, Tia, for joining
Yeah.
me today. everybody who's been watching right now, and if you're watching later, thank you for being here with me and Tia for Coffee and Convo with the authors. And I'm looking forward to the next time. And whoever we have next, I'll have to check my calendar to see which authors we have next. I know we've got several, but if you have someone in your life who needs this, I want to ask you to do two things. I want to ask you to grab your copy or an extra copy of Tia's book and give it to them. And if you need to take off the hardcover book wrap and you want to wrap it in brown paper bag and tape it closed, you know what? One of the most transformational books in my life was given to me in a Walmart bag wrapped in brown paper. And if that's what you need to do, that's fine. If you need to gift it on Kindle to a friend and that's safer, that's fine. But I want to encourage you that if you're watching this and you are walking alongside someone who needs this but may not either know about it or be free to get it themselves, get them a copy of Tia's book. If you know someone who needs that Freedom Navigator text coaching, myfreedomnavigator.com, drop me a message, fill out the application. And if you want to stay in touch with Tia, follow her on social media, wherever you prefer to hang out, because clearly, Tia, you're on all of them. So.
And it's
so
not
wherever you prefer, right? But wherever you prefer to hang out, follow Tia. Send this, and last thing is, forward this. Either tag a friend, whether you're watching on Facebook or on my YouTube channel, either tag a friend or share this interview forward, because this conversation has so many important points that somebody in your life needs to hear. So share it forward, contact Tia, grab the book. There we go.
Thank you.
That's the summary.
Thank you,
Tia, for being here.
Yeah.
See you guys.
Bye.